Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will be discussing Patient Payment Trends 2022, Learn All the Secrets. My name is Brooke. I am a Junior Marketing Coordinator here at Mend, and today I have the privilege of joining Matt McBride, CEO at Mend. Matt, how are you doing today?
Brooke, I'm doing great and pumped to be here and talk about the patient payment landscape today.
Fabulous. So the agenda today is rather simple, but it is packed with opportunities to get paid faster with full automation. Matt is going to take us through industry insights and cover how to automate patient payments. And then finally, we'll round out our webinar, as always, with a Q&A session. And starting now, just to remind you all that you can use that Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, and we will get to as many questions as we can at the end. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and kick off our agenda with industry payment insights. Matt, what are consumers reporting around their expectations for healthcare payments?
Yeah, so I think starting from the top, we see that 91% of consumers prefer electronic payment methods, specifically for medical bills. And we'll get into some of the data on what's actually happening and being sent, which is, most likely paper in the majority of cases. So there's sort of this big gap between how we all prefer to receive and interact and pay our medical bills versus what's actually happening today. And then we see that 60% of consumers expect their digital healthcare experience to mirror that of retail. And we'll look at some of these different industries today and kind of see how patients rank different industries and the ease of use of those payment experiences. And you'll see that retail ranks really well because you can, swipe a card, or on the internet, you can pay very quickly, maybe even keep a card on file. It's the payment is, usually just a click versus kind of what the experience tends to be for healthcare. And then the last item on the slide here, 45% would pay faster if they were notified by email, text, or phone call. And I think this is the big shift that is going to happen in healthcare, and we'll get to the regulatory environment and what has changed there to maybe open things up for text messages, which are a great way to engage with people and get their attention quickly and get them to take action quickly. So I think that'll be a big focus for today in the presentation.
If I have an outstanding balance, I usually receive a paper bill. US Bank surveyed over 1,100 people across all 50 states. Matt, what does this data tell us?
Yeah, so what the data says, and there's lots of different data and studies out there, and what we've seen in a lot of these studies is that somewhere between 51 and about 75% of medical bills are still being sent to patients using paper. So we kind of took one of maybe a more favorable study in terms of paper bills and saying that only 0.5%, some studies are a little bit closer to 3/4 or 75% are still being sent through the mail. Then we see some use of automated phone calls, although I think, a lot of people are blocking calls, don't answer their phone unless they really know who it is. You see about 24% visit an online portal. And usually, I think, most patients are being prompted to go to that portal with a paper statement, whether they see that there's a portal on that statement, or there's a QR code or something along those lines. So now that big chunk there still could have originated from a paper statement. And then we start to see some adoption from text messages, and then app notifications, which we'll cover a little bit more in the presentation. But definitely a big opportunity in the regulatory landscape has changed in such a way to provide new methods potentially for patients that they would prefer anyways.
The US Bank survey also asked respondents about the most difficult payment processes. Matt, what do these insights tell us?
Yeah, well, you can see healthcare is kind of in a league of its own there, all the way on the right with 46%. I mean, that's almost half of consumers saying that it's the most difficult payment process. But I think it's worth just spending a couple minutes. I know everybody who's attending today has probably dealt with bills and all of these categories, but we already sort of touched on retail, which seems to be the best, where you can just insert your card into the card reader, or maybe you're purchasing online and they've got the credit card stored securely and you can just click and make a payment pretty easy. At restaurants, pretty easy. You just give your card to the server and then they make the payment for you. So that's pretty easy. The grocery store, same thing, can usually just put the chip right in the card reader and off you go with your groceries. To starting to look at maybe hotels, for example. Usually you've got to put a card in to book the reservation, but they put a card on file before you get the keys to your room, and then when you're done, you can pretty much just leave, drop your keys in a box, and they've got the card on file and they're going to charge you, and you just walk out the door. It's pretty easy. Banking, I think banking has led the way with bill pay, and sort of taking a lot of these maybe recurring and bills that you get through paper and giving you a way to do it through a portal, so that that ranks pretty well. Airlines, you pretty much book online, pay online. Pretty simple, usually pretty straightforward. And then you can see that maybe telecom and utilities didn't quite rank as high, and I think one of the things that kind of stands out to medical bills sometimes is there's confusion and questions. And I sort of think a lot of times, looking at your phone bill or your utilities bill, there's all these additional taxes, there's all these line items, there's maybe even city fees, it's pretty confusing. And then you're usually, at least maybe for utilities, I know my utilities still show up as a paper. I know a lot of them are trying to move online and move to putting a card on file. And so I think some of these other industries sort of set the stage for what the future of healthcare payments are going to look like for patients, and they want their experience to mirror the experience that they have when they're purchasing other things. And just looking at this data and looking at how consumers rank this as difficult, there's a big opportunity here.
On one side, patient satisfaction and retention are very important. And on the other side, healthcare organizations need cash flow to run their operations. What do some of the other industry reports tell us?
Yeah, so I think a big one that stands out is that somewhere between I think the results vary depending on how the question is asked, but a lot of the surveys are trying to get a sense for, does the payment experience affect retention and loyalty? So, would the payment experience perhaps make you move or change doctors, healthcare organizations? And so the results vary. What we've seen is probably somewhere between 50%. Some studies say 50%. This one was as high as 93%. But there, I think if the payment experience is not great, and then maybe there were a couple other things that weren't great, if there were a couple other hiccups along the way, you could be creating a scenario where maybe that person is not going to stay, and they're going to shop and they're going to look for another provider that's online with scheduling and seems to have a more modern experience. And I think we definitely see that among younger age groups as well, really looking for those, Uber, Amazon type of experiences where it's far more frictionless and just more convenient. And then I think on the provider side, when you have a process that consumers say is difficult, and there's paper and it takes time for that to get printed and sent in the mail, all of these things, the length of time, the friction in the process, it just ultimately means that you're not going to get paid as fast. And so, we've seen in studies that somewhere around 70% of providers said it takes more than 30 days to collect from a patient. I mean, imagine as soon as you knew that outstanding balance, sending a text and an email, and the person makes the payment the same day. What would that do to AR days and to cash flow for your business? And then if, a lot of organizations are saying it can take more than one statement to collect. So, you're talking, 50, 60 cents a statement just in paper and postage and whatever labor it took to get that payment out there. And then it takes, 30 days or longer. And it's not an experience that patients want anymore, that they say is difficult. All of these things just add up into opportunities for any healthcare organization to take their payments to the next level.
Mend takes security very seriously. We are SOC 2 Type 2 certified based on high trust. Mend is also PCI compliant and follows the NIST framework. Matt, how do consumers feel about security when making a payment?
Yeah, so we thought some of this information was interesting, and you can kind of see a little bit of a difference between the payment methods on the left-hand side versus the payment methods on the right-hand side. They get a little more electronic on the right-hand side of the screen. And as they get a little more electronic, there does seem to be a little less apprehension around security. So I think that, based on this, consumers are looking and concerned about security. And for good reason. I think everybody in attendance today, myself, everybody, we've all had that charge that we didn't recognize on our credit card, or got some scam email or something. I mean, people are worried about their money and their payments, and they don't want to experience fraud or anything along those lines. And so I think the point of this slide is that there are opportunities to move in a more electronic, digital type of environment. But then I think you really want to communicate to patients the level of security that your payment solution has. So let's say, for example, for Mend secure payments, we don't, the credit card never touches any of our systems or servers, even though it looks like it's part of our solution and our system. It actually just goes directly to Visa, where they keep all the cards on file, or where they'll take a credit card and process the transaction. We never see it. Staff members for our customers can never see the credit card, can never access it. Nobody could go in and look at it and get the expiration date and the numbers. Nobody on our side can access it. So I think those could be opportunities to communicate that you take security and compliance seriously, and then and you want to protect the information, and that nobody has access to that information. Even if they wanted to, there's nothing somebody got in and hacked your system, nobody has access, nobody can retrieve that credit card. So it does seem to be a concern that consumers have, and so probably something to communicate no matter what solution you're using.
All right, before we continue our webinar, we're going to go ahead and poll our audience today with a simple question for you all. Our question is, how do you handle patient payments today? You should all be able to see the question now, and I'll give you all a few minutes to go ahead and answer. And then once I see everyone goes ahead and puts in their response, we'll go ahead and move on with our presentation. So it looks like our top answer right now is paper bills, with a second running up with patient portal. Very little of you are saying app. So it looks like everyone basically has said paper bills and patient portal, which is great.
Yeah, and I think pretty consistent with some of the data we showed from US Bank as well. Somewhere between half and 3/4 are still sending paper statements. And so I think there's a huge opportunity to increase cash flow and just increase overall collections by providing a more convenient, frictionless experience.
All right, we'll go ahead and end that. Thank you everyone for your responses. We appreciate it as always. And on to our next slide here. It seems that all sorts of businesses are going mobile with payments. For example, the Starbucks app. Matt, what is Men doing to modernize healthcare payments?
Yeah, so payments is something that we've done for a really long time, actually. Offering telemedicine, it's almost mandatory to have some sort of payment option if the patient is going to be at home and there's never an opportunity to swipe the card or anything along those lines. So it's something that was part of our telemedicine offering for a long time that we've turned into a broader product for any type of appointment. So it could be before the visit, could be before an in-person visit, a virtual visit, could be after the visit if the balance isn't known until after the claim has cleared the insurance company. And, really just kind of focusing on and building off of these frictionless experiences that we've already created for patients and sort of turning this into a product on its own. And it's something that we saw a lot of customers looking for help with. And so essentially what we do is we can get the patient balance from the medical billing system. We can get a text and an email out to the patient in a very easy manner. They can access the amount that's owed, look at their statement. We'll kind of show you what this looks like in the next slide real quickly. Or we can even charge a card on file. So we have customers that have gotten the proper authorizations from patients to do that. And as soon as a balance is known, we can just go charge the card automatically. So whether the patient pays or we auto collect, just depending on what that healthcare organization wants to do, once we have a successful payment, we go ahead and update the medical billing system to say, hey, we collected $50 or we collected $100 from this person, so that everything can be automated, but also we want to make sure that we're keeping accurate accounting records as well. So pretty simple, can be pretty automated for a healthcare organization and even for the patient.
It looks like we have the entire process fully automated for a healthcare organization. Matt, let's go ahead and talk us through the patient experience, which we will now pull up the Figma demo for you all. One second. Here we go. All right, Matt, so you can go ahead and take everyone through it.
Yep, it's just taking a second to come up. There we go. All right. So we have this first screen here. If you can go back one slide, Brooke.
Here we go.
This isn't the mend system.
Keeps going through.
Yeah, if you might just have to back up a couple more.
Yeah. Here we go.
There we go. So this isn't necessarily the mend system where this could be, pretend this is your medical billing software or system, whatever you're using, pretend that that's what this is. And you can see that we've got an encounter, just sort of a dummy encounter from January. And it looks like there is some patient responsibility that's left in the amount of $50. And so as soon as this amount is known, that could be immediately after the visit, or maybe the claim has to go back and forth with the insurance. But as soon as that amount is known, we can pick up that balance and then put a new process at work immediately. And so, Brooke, you can click on to the next slide. So from here, once that balance is known, we can have different business logic in place. Maybe there's a minimum amount before we bug somebody. Maybe there's a maximum amount. We wouldn't want to auto charge somebody if there's a maximum. There's different types of logic and rules that we can set up to create a workflow that can work for your organization. So those rules will run. And then up next, the system from there could auto charge, or it could send a digital form directly to the patient in the format of a text message or an email. And so we can go ahead and click that link. And the patient simply puts in their date of birth, which we all know our birthday, usually a pretty a popular day. And so they put in their date of birth. And then up next, we can collect any consents, which we'll describe here in a couple slides, and kind of how the regulatory environment has changed, so they can just quickly accept those consents. And then we can create a web-based experience that gives them access to their statement, maybe describes what the charges include, gets to the amount that's owed. We had a $50 amount that was owed, and they can see that. They can add a new card on file, or just use a card that we've already stored securely for them. And just in one simple click, they can submit and make that payment. After that payment has been made, we're going to go back to your medical billing system, and we're going to go ahead and log that $50 was collected successfully, and keep everything up to date and accurate from an accounting perspective. So, I mean, just imagine, as soon as that amount is known, being able to engage, have patient financial engagement that's, almost instant or same day. So a lot of opportunity there.
Thank you, Matt, for taking everyone through that. The patient side looks very user-friendly. Matt, what kind of results are we seeing so far?
Yeah, so over the years, what we've seen is on average, 44% of these web forms that we create, 44% have been completed within 24 hours, and we've seen 72% completion overall. And I think a lot of it, we'll talk about some of the secrets on the next slide, but a lot of it is just making sure that we meet the patient where they are and provide them with an incredibly easy experience like the one you just saw.
A 72% completion rate is pretty incredible. Matt, what are the secrets to achieving high engagement rates around patient payments?
Yeah, so I think even just thinking broader than payments, right? There's a lot of things that you might want to do. You might want to get appointment reminders to somebody, or send them medical histories to complete, or have them fill out a satisfaction survey. And so text and email can be extremely effective if you ensure that you hit the inbox. And so I think that's something we pay a lot of attention to. So we'll look at reachable versus unreachable records in our system. Are we being given all of the contact information? Is there missing contact information? So that's something we pay a lot of attention to. And then we make sure that we send text messages and email in a way that ensures it's going to hit the inbox. So for example, our email and our sending practices are certified and audited by Validity. And Validity tells all of the email providers across the globe that Mend sends email the proper way. So you don't have to put their email into the spam box. You put their email into the inbox. And so we have extremely high deliverability rates, and we can actually measure our inbox placement. And then we send text messages in such a way to make sure, we all have gotten some spam text messages now and seen that filtered. We send text messages in a way to make sure that they're not being filtered and that they're reaching the inbox, so that the person can see the message, see what they need to do, fill out a form, make a payment, what have you, and then get that done. And then, we want to make sure that we don't have any other friction in the process, no logins, no downloads, no sign up processes or anything like that. We can put a card on file, and then we even have instant technical support that's available. If somebody got stuck on a form, or there was a decline or something like that happened, there's a simple need help button, and we have people available within 15, 20 seconds that can provide assistance. So, every single aspect of this is really made to be effortless for the healthcare organization or the patient, and really provide no excuses for a missed payment or a missed medical history, or whatever the case may be.
For those that don't know, text messaging was invented in the UK in the 80s and 90s. It has been evolving ever since, and the laws have had to keep up. Matt, what are some of the recent changes in federal laws concerning texting?
Yeah, so most of the laws concerning texting fall under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So one of the things that the government has to do is protect consumers, and some of those protections involved, making unsolicited phone calls as an example. And so the TCPA was really enacted to regulate companies in such a way to maintain do not call lists, and follow practices around making phone calls to people, and that expanded into text messaging as well, because there were periods of time where phone calls were not unlimited, text messages were not unlimited. So as consumers, we could have incurred fees depending on what somebody was doing and trying to contact us. In 2015, the TCPA caught up with text messaging and healthcare. And they allowed for certain exemptions for texting specific to important healthcare information. And so things like appointment reminders, prescription refills, or maybe other types of requests for information, they changed the rules around needing express written consent from the patient. However, in 2015, billing or accounting text messages were not part of these exclusions. So in 2015, between 2015 and 2021, if you wanted to send somebody a text message about their healthcare bill, the best practice was probably to get them to provide express written consent or directly opt in and elect to receive their medical bills in that way. And that kind of creates a number of different issues in trying to get everybody to opt into that, and then maintain those lists, and then you can only send to whoever is opted in, and it's not the best situation to be in, and results are going to be limited if you only had 10% that opted in, and then you've still got to send paper to everybody else. However, last year there was a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. It was actually litigation from Facebook, and that Supreme Court ruling basically almost removed the TCPA. And so what changed was the definition of an auto dialer. And so the definition of an auto dialer was sort of what everything else was built off of. And that definition was reduced to a system that randomly generates a phone number or calls numbers sequentially. So basically, you weren't provided this phone number by somebody. You were generating one and making a call or sending a text, what have you. And so what this did is because this definition was reduced in scope, that really opens the door to be able to send text messages without express written consent, and allow folks to opt out if they want. Now, we are going to talk about consent. We still think that is important, but there were some big changes last year, and now the door is open to engage around medical bills with patients in a new way.
We saw in the demo a few slides back that Mend can capture consents on behalf of customers. What is Mend doing to ensure compliance and best practices?
Yeah, so what we like to do, depending on the types of workflows, how we're going to be communicating with patients and what we're going to be doing, is a payment involved or not, we like to provide all of our customers with consents that we feel they should collect from patients, but our system can collect those on your behalf. And you saw that in the demo, right? Before the person saw anything having to do with making a payment, we presented them with some consents that they could review and agree to, or leave if they don't like those consents. And so generally, what we would recommend is something around text or email. So you at least have the documentation on file, right? You have something on file that says, this person did agree to receiving text and email in this way. And we explained how they would access, they would click a link, put in their date of birth and all that. So we still think it's a best practice to collect consents at some part in the process. And then for payments, you might want to, have a payment consent as well that says, you agree to keep a card on file, or we may, store your credit card. We follow these practices as PCI compliant. So a payment consent could be recommended. And then we're going to be capturing these consents in an electronic method of signature. So we might even recommend an e-signature consent just to be in compliance with the Federal e-Sign Act. And so depending on the workflows, we'll recommend these consents. You may already be collecting them in another way. But if not, we can easily put these consents into the process, make it really easy. We'll send them once a year or include them once a year for patients to agree to. And then you've got everything on file in case something were to arise. You have everything you need to protect your organization and follow best practices.
Matt, as a healthcare organization, what types of problems does a solution like this help to solve?
Yes, I mean, if you think about it, as soon as that medical billing system knows there's an amount, we can get a text message to somebody, and something like 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. And you saw some of the results, 44% done same day, 72% overall. So the opportunity to speed up the revenue cycle is tremendous. And so I think any CFO, any controller, any accountant, director of revenue cycle, if they could move a significant percentage of their cash collections from 30 days out to a day or 2 or 3 or what have you, I mean, that could be huge for an organization. Then, these processes can be automated. So if 72% could be moved to an automated fashion that doesn't involve somebody manually charging cards, calling people, stuffing envelopes for statements, there could be savings as well in labor in a time where the great resignation and burnout and all of these things are causing a lot of folks in healthcare to look for other opportunities. So there's again another opportunity there. And then we saw in the data, this is what patients want. And the way that you're doing things with paper statements, we saw how consumers really feel about that. So providing a better experience is only going to have a positive impact on patient satisfaction and retention.
Before we get to the Q&A portion of today's event, our audience may or may not know that Mend is a complete patient engagement platform for in-person, virtual, or any type of visit. Matt, can you explain this further for our audience today, as Mend can address more than patient payments?
Yeah, I think Mend is a complete patient engagement platform. So whether you want to have an enterprise telemedicine program, enterprise financial engagement, enterprise patient engagement with patient scheduling and changes, confirmations, appointment reminders, forms, digital check-in, we can provide everything needed for the visit itself in the telemedicine offerings that we have. And then we can follow up after the visit as well if we want to have post-visit notifications to get your surveys out to folks, collect payments, so on and so forth. So all of those touch points with a patient can move into a more modern digital type of environment that consumers are looking for.
If you're looking for more informative content, we keep a library in the resource section of the mend.com website. We have a more in-depth product presentation of payments titled "How to Automate Patient Payments Before and After the Visit." Simply navigate to mend.com, click on resources, and you can access all of our on-demand content there. In our white paper section, we have brand new content titled "Patient Payment Trends in Healthcare For those in our audience interested in this content, you can go to men.com, click on resources, and then click onto white papers. And with that, Matt, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. As a reminder to our audience, Zoom has that Q&A option in the toolbar to make easier for us to answer your questions. Carol posted the following question: how do you get patients to opt in to text messaging?
Yeah, so I think we highlighted this a little bit in the demo, that essentially some of the rules in the TCPA have changed because the definition of an auto dialer was really diminished. And you can send that text message. The person could say stop if they want. We also have some other methods for them to say that they don't want to use text as well. But you don't have to have that express written consent anymore. Just again, too, just want to know, we're not attorneys here. And you always want to just verify that with legal counsel and make sure based on your particular scenario. But you can send that text message, and then from there, we'll collect the appropriate consents, just as some added protection to make sure that your organization has the best possible posture, from a compliance and regulatory perspective. So you can send that text, and then as part of the process, we'll present those consents and make sure that we get them on file for you, and we prompt those to patients every year. We could prompt them, every time too, if that's what you wanted to do. But we can basically collect those consents, and based on some of the changes in the Supreme Court ruling last year, you don't have to have that express written consent anymore.
Thank you for answering that. And then Chuck is asking, are you collecting payments for telemedicine visits or in-person and telemedicine appointments?
Both. Everything that we offer, with the exception of telemedicine, although we have kiosk mode for telemedicine, so I guess that's in person too. Everything that we offer, our entire platform was built from the ground up for hybrid care. So one platform, anything you need from a virtual perspective and a telemedicine perspective, we can do the scheduling, the reminders, the forms, the payments, everything. Anything that you want to do from a patient engagement strategy for in-person visits, you can do patient scheduling, the reminders, forms, payments, etc. We even have groups that do, home visits, phone visits. Doesn't matter what type of appointment, we've done and seen it all. And we can really be one strategy, one partner, one integration to maintain, and we can meet the needs of our customers for the entire patient journey and the entire patient engagement experience.
Grace is wondering if the bills legally still have to be sent by snail mail.
And Grace, I'm not aware of anything that says you have to send that paper statement. I would imagine that you have to provide something. You have to provide some detail on the bill. You have to provide a bill. But from what we've seen, generally an electronic method is going to be just as accepted as any other type of method. I'll give you another common item in sort of a wet physical signature versus an electronic signature. And some customers say, well, the state requires us to have this actual, physical signature and blue ink and this, that, and the other. And every time we bring our lawyer to the conversation and their lawyer to the conversation, and we ask the question, can we use this electronic method? We always find that these electronic methods are accepted. Now, again, as I said before, I'm not an attorney. Mend is not a legal practice. But it's definitely a question that you should ask and you should pose, because there's no reason why, in 2022, why you shouldn't be able to communicate with somebody in an electronic format that saves paper, that, saves expenses, and is far more effective. There's no reason why your organization and your patients can't benefit from electronic communications.
Another one popping up from Grace. She's saying, so if there is signed consent for text or email bills, it is legal. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think that based on the Supreme Court ruling, you don't even really have to have the opt-in any longer. And again, confirm this with your legal counsel. So what we then like to do is we like to just have the consents for our customers anyway, and put all the specifics in there, right? You're going to get the link, you'll put the link, you'll click a date of birth, you'll have access to payments. Anything that we're doing from a payment perspective, I think it's good to just have that in a consent and collect those consents. This is a heavily regulated industry where HIPAA and privacy is extremely important. So I think it's always in your best interest to have those. Are they necessarily required, according to some of these laws and how they've changed? Not necessarily, but I think anybody would agree, and a good lawyer would say it's still a best practice. So I think the door is open to implement text and use email and use other things, but it's still a good idea to have the consents and collect those anyways.
Thanks, Matt. Hopefully that clears everything up for you, Grace. And I would just like to note that if anyone does have further questions that aren't fully answered after this, Matt keeps his email fully open to any questions for you all. And then we have another question here. Sydney is asking, when will automated payments be available through Mend?
Yeah, so we've done payments for a long time. It's now this year, it's an official product. It's a product that we will sell on its own across virtual, in person, or any type of appointment. So whether we need to collect before the visit happens, after the visit happens, it's available now. You can email me if it's something you want to take a look at, or you can go to mend.com/demo. And, we can kind of walk you through the solution and understand your use case. And then, Brooke, I saw that it looked like Steve had a follow-up to some of the topics covered today. It's a little bit longer of a question, but there's actually several questions in here, but when the first point about, if you had to get express written consent from a patient to send them a medical bill, maybe back in 2015, when I said 10%, it seems like that would be a difficult process, right? To have to get everybody to get all your patients to opt in and then manage those lists. That's what changed. That's what changed in 2021. The TCPA was, tremendously reduced in scope. So I think it's worth talking to, whoever's in charge of your compliance or your corporate counsel, what have you. You can send a text. Do you have to give somebody the ability to opt out? Is sort of another follow on to that question. Yes, if somebody opts out and says stop, says don't text me anymore, you do have to maintain that information. And so if somebody replies stop to one of our text messages, they don't get another text message. It's that simple. And then we have some customers where if somebody did opt out of anything in our system, we communicate that back to them so that they can maintain a master list of those opt-outs. So you do have to have a way for somebody to opt out. And then Steve also said, well, what if there's a bill for a small amount, like $1.25? That's part of the business logic that we covered in the demo, where we can say, so for example, some customers will say the balance has to be at least $5, or the balance has to be at least $10. Otherwise, do nothing. And so that's part of the business logic that's built into our system. And we have some customers who will auto charge the cards. And they may say, well, don't exceed this amount. If it's above 200, if it's above this amount, send them the form instead. We'll send them the form instead. So all of those different types of scenarios we've sort of worked out over the years with our customers, and we'll be able to guide you and come up with something that isn't going to annoy somebody. It'd be annoying if you got a bill for 50 cents or, $1.25 or something like that. We're not going to do that to you.
And Steve said, thanks, Matt. He was a little late to the demo part. But aside from that, I think that covers our Q&A session for our webinar today. And I just wanted to thank everyone, as always, for tuning in and joining Matt McBride and myself today. It's always a pleasure discussing this with you, Matt, and we hope you all tune in again next time.
Thanks, everybody.